Welcome to engNatural. Learn English naturally. I'm Puck. Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt a sense of panic? You know, that feeling of, oh no, I have to talk to someone. What do I say? What if it's awkward? If that sounds familiar, you are in the right place today.
I think everyone has felt that way at some point. It's such a universal feeling.
It really is. And that's why today we're diving into the art of small talk, how to start a conversation with anyone. And I'm so happy to have an expert with us. This is Maya. She's a community builder and an event organizer, which means her job is literally to connect people. Maya, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Puck. I'm excited to demystify small talk. It's really not as scary as people think.
I hope so, because we're going to break it all down. And hey, before we get started, I want to let you know that we've created a fantastic free resource for this episode. You can get your free PDF lesson, which includes the full transcript, a vocabulary list with definitions, and key sentence structures we discussed today. The link is right there in the description below.
It's a great way to review everything and really make it stick.
Exactly. So don't forget to grab that. And if you enjoy our conversations and want to improve your English listening skills naturally, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button. We'd love to have you with us every week. All right, Maya, let's start with the big question. So let's just get right into it. When people hear the phrase small talk, they often think of boring, meaningless conversations about the weather. Is that what it is?
That's the stereotype for sure. But I see it completely differently. For me, small talk isn't the conversation itself. It's the key that unlocks a bigger, more meaningful conversation.
A key. I like that. So it's a tool, not the final product.
Exactly. Think of it as a bridge. You can't just magically appear on the other side of the river in the land of deep personal connection. You need a bridge to get there. Small talk is that bridge.
That's a great way to put it. So it's about showing you're open and willing to connect?
Precisely. It's a low-risk way to test the waters. You're sending a signal that says, hey, I'm friendly, I'm open to talking. And you're giving the other person a chance to send that signal back.
So it's not trivial. It's actually a very important social skill.
It's fundamental. It's how friendships start, how business relationships are built, how you become part of a community. I have a story about this, actually.
Oh, let's hear it.
A few years ago, I was at a big marketing conference. I didn't know many people. During a coffee break, I was standing in line, and the woman in front of me had this really unique, interesting laptop bag.
Okay.
So my small talk was just that. I said, wow, that's a really cool laptop bag. Where did you find it? A very simple, low-stakes comment. An anchor.
Right. The bag was the anchor. What happened?
She lit up. She told me she got it from a small local artist in her hometown. That led to us talking about supporting local businesses, which then led to us talking about our own work in community marketing. We just clicked.
That's amazing. All from a comment about a bag.
Yep. Long story short, that woman is now one of my closest collaborators. We've worked on 3 major projects together, our companies have a fantastic partnership, and it all started with a 5-second piece of small talk in a coffee line.
Wow. That really puts it into perspective. It's not just small talk then. It's starting talk. It's the beginning of something potentially much bigger.
That's the perfect way to describe it. It's the starting block. Without it, the race to connection never even begins. You're just standing still.
So, for our listeners who might be more introverted or shy, what's the first mindset shift they need to make?
Stop thinking of it as a performance. It's not a test you have to pass. The goal isn't to be the most interesting person in the room.
What is the goal then?
The goal is simply to make a connection, to show genuine human curiosity about the person in front of you. That's it. If you can focus on being curious instead of being interesting, it takes so much pressure off.
Be curious, not interesting. That's powerful. Because when you're curious, you're asking questions, you're listening. You're not worried about what you're going to say next.
You got it. You're focused on them, not on yourself. And guess what? People love talking about themselves and their interests. When you show genuine curiosity, you make them feel seen and valued.
And that's how you build that bridge you were talking about.
That's how you lay the very first stone. It's about creating a tiny positive moment. That positive moment can then lead to another and another. Before you know it, you're having a real conversation.
It seems so simple when you explain it that way, but I know for many, there's a huge barrier to even laying that first stone. The fear is very real.
Oh, absolutely. And we should definitely talk about that. Acknowledging the fear is the first step to overcoming it. It's not about pretending the fear doesn't exist. It's about learning how to act anyway.
I think that's the perfect place to go next, because understanding why it's important is one thing, but actually doing it when your heart is pounding and your mind goes blank, that's a whole different challenge.
It is. But it's a challenge anyone can overcome with the right tools and a little bit of practice.
Okay, Maya. So we've established that small talk is the bridge to connection. But for a lot of people, that bridge is guarded by a big, scary monster called awkwardness.
Yes, the awkward monster. I know him well. He tells you that you're going to say something stupid, that everyone is judging you, that the silence will be unbearable.
Exactly. What is at the root of that fear? Why are we so terrified of a simple conversation?
I think it comes down to a fundamental human need, the need to belong. We are social creatures. The fear of being rejected by the group is a very deep, primal fear, and small talk feels like the first test. If we fail, we fear we'll be cast out.
So we're afraid of being judged as weird or boring and then being left alone.
Precisely. The stakes feel incredibly high, even though logically we know it's just a conversation. The biggest fear is running out of things to say, that dreaded, painful silence where you're both just standing there.
Ugh, the awkward pause. I can feel it now. It feels like an eternity.
It does. But here's a secret. The other person is probably just as nervous as you are. They're also worried about what to say next.
That's a good point. We often assume we're the only ones feeling anxious.
We always do. So one of the best things you can do is to be the one to save the conversation. If you can take that pressure off the other person, they will be so grateful.
Okay, so how do you do that? How do you fight the awkward monster?
You have to reframe your thinking. The goal is not a perfect, seamless conversation. The goal is connection. And connection can be messy. It's okay if it's a little awkward. In fact, sometimes acknowledging the awkwardness can be a great way to break the ice.
Wait, you mean just saying it out loud?
Sometimes, yes, in a lighthearted way. I actually have a funny story about this. I was at a networking event for my company, and I saw a man standing alone. I wanted to practice what I preach, so I walked over.
Brave. I like it.
I went up to him and, with a big smile, I said, "Hi, I'm Maya. I don't know anyone here, so I decided to come talk to the other person standing alone." And he just stared at me.
Oh, no.
It was a solid 5 seconds of silence. My brain was screaming, "Abort mission, abort!" I was starting to panic. And then I just laughed and said, "Okay, well, that came out a bit more awkward than I intended."
What did he do?
He burst out laughing. He said, "I'm so sorry. I was just so surprised that someone came to talk to me. I was trying to figure out if I knew you." It completely broke the tension. We ended up having a fantastic conversation about the shared terror of networking events.
Wow. So by naming the awkwardness, you made it funny instead of painful.
Exactly. You take away its power. It shows you don't take yourself too seriously, which is a very likable quality. Now, I'm not saying you should do that every time, but it's a tool in your toolbox. The bigger lesson is, it's okay if it's not perfect.
So lower the stakes. It's not a performance, it's just a chat.
Yes. And here's another practical tip for avoiding that dreaded silence. Always be prepared with a few open-ended questions.
What's the difference between an open-ended and a closed-ended question?
A closed-ended question can be answered with yes, no, or a single word. For example, are you enjoying the event? The answer is yes. End of conversation. Dead end.
Right. The conversation killer.
An open-ended question invites a story or an opinion. It usually starts with what, how, or why. Instead of, are you enjoying the event? You could ask, what's been your favorite part of the event so far?
Ah, I see. That requires a much more detailed answer. It gives you more to work with.
It gives you everything. Their answer will give you new topics to talk about. Maybe they mention a speaker you also saw, or a topic you're interested in. It keeps the conversational ball rolling.
So the mindset is be okay with imperfection. And the tactic is use open-ended questions.
That's a huge part of it. And remember my earlier point? Be curious. When you are genuinely curious about the other person, you will naturally think of open-ended questions. How did you get into your line of work? What do you enjoy most about living in this city? What's a project you're really excited about right now?
These are great. They're not intrusive or overly personal, but they invite a real answer.
They are discovery questions. You're trying to discover something about the person. And that's what makes it an adventure, not a test.
I love that. Small talk as an adventure. That completely changes the feeling around it. Okay, so we've tackled the fear. I think now we need the how-to, the concrete step-by-step strategy for walking up to a stranger and starting that adventure.
Perfect. Let's get into the practical mechanics. I have a very simple 3-step method that works in almost any situation.
All right, Maya, we're ready. We've reframed our mindset, we've armed ourselves with open-ended questions. Now, what is the practical, step-by-step process for actually starting the conversation?
Okay, this is my go-to framework. It's simple, it's easy to remember, and it's called the ARE method. ARE.
ARE. Okay, I'm listening. What does it stand for?
A is for anchor, R is for reveal, E is for encourage.
Anchor, reveal, and courage. Let's break that down. What's the anchor?
The anchor is something you both share in that specific moment or environment. It's your common ground. It could be the event you're at, the food you're eating, the music that's playing, the long line you're both in, anything in your immediate shared reality.
So it's something you can both see and comment on, like your story about the laptop bag. The bag was the anchor.
Exactly. It's the safest and most natural way to start. You're not pulling a random topic out of thin air. You're commenting on the here and now. For example, at a conference, your anchor could be, wow, that last speaker was really inspiring.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a solid, non-weird starting point. What's next? R for reveal.
Reveal is where you share a tiny, low-stakes piece of information about yourself that's related to the anchor. This is crucial. It turns a simple observation into a conversation. It's you offering a little piece of yourself to build the bridge.
So it's not just a comment, it's a small self-disclosure. Can you give an example using the conference speaker anchor?
Sure. The anchor is, wow, that last speaker was really inspiring. The reveal could be, I'm definitely going to try his advice on team management this week. Or, her point about creativity really resonated with me because I work in a design field.
Ah, I see. You're adding a personal connection. You're giving them something to respond to.
You got it. It's a tiny bit of vulnerability. You're saying, here's a little something about me. It makes you more human and relatable. It's not a deep, dark secret, it's just a small piece of information.
Okay, that feels very manageable. Anchor, then reveal. What's the last step? E for encourage.
Encourage is where you hand the conversation over to them with an open-ended question. You've done your part, now you encourage theirs.
So you're turning the focus back to them.
Yes, this is where you use those open-ended questions we talked about. So let's put it all together. A. Anchor. Wow, that last speaker was really inspiring. R. Reveal. Her point about creativity really resonated with me because I work in a design field. E. Encourage. What did you think of her talk? Or what was your biggest takeaway?
That is so smooth. Anchor, reveal, encourage. It flows perfectly. It gives the other person so much to work with. They can comment on the speaker, ask about your design work. The conversation has so many places it can go from there.
That's the beauty of it. It's a structured way to start a natural-sounding conversation. It takes the guesswork out of it. You just follow the 3 steps.
Can we try another one? Let's say we're at a friend's party and the food is amazing. How would you use ARE?
Easy. Let's say we're both near the snack table. A. Anchor. This guacamole is incredible. R. Reveal. It reminds me of the kind my friend from Mexico used to make. E. Encourage. Have you tried any of the other food? What would you recommend?
Brilliant! It's simple, it's friendly, and it works. You know, I have a kind of related tip that I found really effective, and it's a bit unexpected.
Oh, do tell.
It's the compliment and question technique, but with a specific twist. Instead of complimenting something a person chose, like their clothes, I try to compliment something about them, a skill or an action.
Ooh, I like that. More personal. Give me an example.
So, if you're at a work meeting and someone gives a great presentation, instead of just, good job, you could go up to them later and say, the way you explained that complex data was so clear. How did you learn to make it so easy to understand?
That is fantastic, Puck, because you're not just complimenting them, you're showing you paid attention and you value their expertise. And the question invites them to share their story.
Exactly. It feels much more genuine and leads to a much more interesting conversation than just, I like your shirt.
I'm totally stealing that. It fits perfectly with the ARE method. The compliment is your anchor and reveal, and the question is your encourage. It's a sophisticated version of it.
So now we have the tools to start a conversation. But what about the other end of it? This is something I think people struggle with just as much. How do you get out of a conversation without being rude?
Ah, the graceful exit. That is an art form in itself, and it is just as important as the opening. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so we've successfully used the ARE method. We're in a great conversation, but now we need to leave. Maybe we need to get a drink or talk to someone else or just leave the event. How do we do this without seeming abrupt or rude?
The graceful exit is all about being polite, positive, and clear. The biggest mistake people make is just disappearing. They just sort of drift away when the other person isn't looking.
The slow fade. Yes, I've seen that. It feels a little weird if you're the one left talking to yourself.
It feels terrible. It makes the person feel unimportant. So the first rule of a graceful exit is always signal your departure verbally. Acknowledge that the conversation is ending.
Okay, so what are some good phrases to use?
You need a positive closing statement and a reason for leaving. The positive statement shows you enjoyed the interaction. It could be something like, well, it was so great talking to you, Alex, or I've really enjoyed our chat about marketing.
So you affirm the connection first. That softens the exit.
Exactly. Then you provide a simple, brief reason for leaving. It doesn't have to be a dramatic excuse. It can be very simple. I'm going to go grab another drink before the next speaker starts. Or, I need to go find my colleague, but it was great to meet you.
Those sound very natural. It was great to talk to you. I'm just going to use the restroom. Simple.
Perfect. The key is to state it as a fact, not to ask for permission. Don't say, is it okay if I go now? Just be confident and polite. Well, I'm heading out now, but it was a pleasure to meet you.
What if it's someone you want to connect with again? How do you incorporate that?
That's a great opportunity for a future-oriented close. You combine the positive statement with a plan to connect later. For example, I'd love to continue this conversation. Are you on LinkedIn? Or, this has been so insightful. I'll send you that article we were talking about. What's the best email for you?
So you're closing the current conversation while opening the door for a future one. That's really smart.
It shows genuine interest and gives you a clear next step. It makes the exit feel like a to be continued rather than a the end.
I'm sure you've had to master this running so many events. Have you ever been trapped in a conversation, one that you struggled to get out of?
Oh, more times than I can count, especially early in my career. I remember one particular event where I was talking to a gentleman who was a monologuer.
A monologuer?
Yes, he just talked and talked about himself, his job, his car, without ever pausing or asking me a single question. I was stuck for what felt like 20 minutes, just nodding and saying, uh-huh.
Ugh, that's the worst. You're just a hostage at that point. How did you escape?
Badly, at first. I kept looking for a pause that never came. I was getting so anxious. Finally, I just had to interrupt. It felt so rude, but I had no choice.
What did you say?
I waited for him to take a tiny breath and I jumped in and said, "That sounds fascinating. I am so sorry to interrupt, but I promised I would say hello to the event host before she gets too busy. It was truly a pleasure speaking with you." And I just walked away.
Wow, that takes courage.
It felt terrifying, but it was so freeing. And I learned a valuable lesson. With a monologuer, you can't wait for an invitation to leave. You have to create it yourself. And using a polite but firm interruption is okay. "I'm so sorry to cut you off, but" is a perfectly acceptable tool when you're trapped.
That's a really good tip for those tough situations. You have to be your own rescuer.
You do. And remember, at a networking event or a party, it's normal and expected for people to circulate and talk to multiple people. You're not being rude by ending one conversation to start another. It's the whole point of the event.
So the formula is positive statement, reason for leaving, plus optional future connection.
You've nailed it. That's the secret sauce for a graceful exit every time. It leaves the other person feeling good, and it leaves you free to move on.
This has all been so incredibly practical. From understanding the why, to overcoming the fear, to the ARE method for starting, and now the formula for ending. It feels like a complete roadmap.
I hope so. The goal is to give people tools so they can feel confident, not scared. Small talk is a skill, and like any skill, you can learn it and get better with practice.
Maya, I can't thank you enough. This has been a masterclass in the art of conversation. You've really turned the idea of dreaded small talk into an exciting opportunity for connection.
It's my pleasure, Puck. I'm passionate about helping people connect, and it always starts with that first simple conversation. If people can walk away from this feeling a little less anxious and a little more empowered, then I'm happy.
I am certain they will. Let's just do a quick recap of the key takeaways. First, we learned that small talk isn't meaningless. It's the bridge to deeper conversations. It's starting talk.
Absolutely. And second, we need to reframe our fear. It's not a performance. The goal is connection, not perfection. Be curious, not interesting.
I love that one. Then we got the super practical ARE method. Anchor on something you both share, reveal a small piece of yourself, and encourage them to share with an open-ended question.
The perfect formula to get started.
And finally, the graceful exit, a positive closing statement, a clear reason for leaving, and an optional plan for a future connection. It's a full toolkit.
You've got it. Now people just need to go out and practice.
That's the perfect segue. To everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on engNatural, Learn English Naturally. I hope you found this as helpful as I did. And don't forget to grab your free PDF lesson for this episode with the transcript, vocabulary, and sentence structures. The link is right in the description. It's the best way to review and practice what you've learned.
It was a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure was all ours. And for our listeners, we have a question for you. We want you to practice. What is your go-to question for starting a conversation? It could be one we mentioned or one of your own. Share it in the comments section wherever you're listening. We'd love to see your ideas and learn from you, too.
What a great idea. I can't wait to read those.
Me too. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss our next conversation. Until then, take care and happy chatting.